Hi, guys, and welcome back to Football Fix. Today, we're going to be talking about one player that should sign for each Premier League club this summer before the transfer window ends. Today, I'm joined by Thomas.
I,
And I'm Alex. So, we'll get straight into it. We're doing it on alphabetical order today, like we did with our Premier League predictions in a couple of videos back. So, Bournemouth first. I'll let you start with who you think.
right, well, Bournemouth's a tricky one. Under Scott Parker, obviously, they play quite defensive football. So, with that in mind, I thought they need someone who's a traditional sort of no-nonsense centre-back. And that is why I went with Nat Phillips from Liverpool. I think for roughly 15 to 20 million pounds, you could probably get him away from Liverpool. He's not the most technically gifted defender, but he's on those sort of Brexit centre halves. So he'll win all the aerial duels, get everything out, no nonsense, and he'll do a job. So that's why I went with Nat Phillips. He's obviously learnt under Klopp and had tutelage from the best centre back in the world right now in Virgil van Dijk, and had winning experience, which that Bournemouth team lacks, and Premier League experience, which they do tend to lack at the moment.
Yeah.
So I thought Nat Phillips, if you can get him off Liverpool, is a sensible option.
Yeah, I think that's a good option as well. Right, so I've gone Chris Willock from QPR. It's a bit of a rogue one, and I'm certain that a few people might not have heard much about him, but he played really well for QPR last season. 18 goal contributions in the Championship. It just shows how good of a player he is. He can play across the front three. Really, I think he's that kind of dynamic player that could be useful to Bournemouth because Solanke's injured at the moment, and I'm not really sure if Kiefer Moore's a Premier League striker, but how dynamic he is, I think he's perfect for them. He's 24 as well. I think it's quite a risk-free signing, to be honest.
He's also ex-Arsenal academy, I believe. He has three brothers. I just know a lot of facts about the Willocks, and two of them are obviously play professional football. One of them being Joe Willock, who was the most successful out of the Willocks. However, I remember when he came through. If it is Chris, I think he's the oldest of the three. He was the one that was touted as the most promising of the three. Obviously, he hasn't proven that. Joe has, but yeah, he's definitely a talent.
Yeah. I think he'd be a good signing for them. Right, so should we move straight on to the mighty Arsenal then? I'll go first for my one here. I've gone Yuri Tielemans. I think he's a great player. The way he carries that ball, 25 years old he is. I think it's exactly what Arsenal need in that midfield. I think they've got Partey, who's that great anchor man in midfield, and they just need someone next to him who carry that ball, play that perfect through ball to Jesus. I think he's exactly what you need.
I completely agree, and that is who I went for as well. Last year of his contract, obviously, as well, so he's probably gettable for about 25 to 30 million as rumoured. From what the Athletics state, it depends on whether we can shift out a midfielder or two. So it depends on this Xhaka left. For me, though, it shouldn't depend on that purely because with Partey getting injured all the time, Tielemans can even deputise as the more defensive of the two midfielders. He isn't the most athletic. That's the only downside to him. Although he is more mobile than Granit Xhaka. And other than that, I think he would be perfect on that left side of the Arsenal midfield. It is noticeable, though, that for me, it's between Tielemans, a backup right back maybe, and a winger. And the winger of note, I know he will feature on this list later on, but the one that we've been linked to most at the moment is between Leroy Sané of Bayern Munich and Cody Gakpo. I know Sané is falling out of favour because he hasn't performed very well, but that's another option if you wanted to go down for the Arsenal route. But next we'll move on to Aston Villa, and I'll go first for this one. For my choice, I was trying to think of Premier League teams who have players who have Premier League experience, who could improve Aston Villa. Now, I wanted them to be established Premier League players from a decent club and have played at a decent level. I looked around. Obviously, I've used Nat Phillips already. I didn't want to use the same player twice if I could help it. And I went to look at Arsenal, my team, and we have an array of centre backs at the moment. Ben White, Tomiyasu can play there, Gabriel, Saliba, etc., so on and so forth. Tierney can even play there if needs be. And Jack has also played there in the past. So for me, for Villa, I thought they do need a centre back though, because there's questions about Mings' ability. They've just got a big injury to
Torn his Achilles. Diego Carlos torn his Achilles. That's an absolute nightmare for them. But
I think a Rob Holding loan would make sense from both parties. So I went with Rob Holding because he's a very good defender. There's that meme going around online where obviously when he comes on and Arsenal switch to 5 at the back, they massively just shut out a game. But he is a good defender. I don't think he gets enough credit for his ball carrying ability and his actual technical ability. And he's just a solid Premier League option. And I think Rob Holding on loan, maybe even till January, while Carlos is injured, makes a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've gone with Douye de Caleta-Car from Marseille. I think it's a similar route, obviously, with the centre back, because Carlos being injured for however long it is, 6 months. I mean, tearing your Achilles, it's 6 months minimum, and then rehab, all of that. So I think the centre back's the main thing. But Caleta-Car, 25, he's been linked with lots of clubs, not just in the Premier League, but in other European leagues. So I think while he doesn't have the Premier League experience, playing for Marseille, he's at a high enough level where he'll slot right in and stand out amongst the rest in their defence.
Absolutely. I'll let you start with the Brentford one then.
Right then, Brentford. So this is one of my more rogue ones, but just because I think Brentford have done great business already this window, and I think there's very few areas they need to improve on. So I've gone with Konrad Laimer from Leipzig. He can play midfield as a ball-carrying midfield like Tielemans, or he can play as the holding midfielder in behind those two central midfielders in the system they play. And he's got a year left on his contract. I was thinking it'd be quite a nice one for them to go and snap him up, add a little extra bit of depth to their midfield. And obviously playing for Leipzig, unlike the opposite way with Caleta-Car, he's almost going a step down in terms of the level he's been playing at, because he's been playing in the Champions League, he's been playing at the highest level of the Bundesliga. So I think it will be a nice progression for him, though, to be able to play at a higher level in the Premier League while not in the highest competition for the year left on his contract. It wouldn't be the biggest fee for him. I wouldn't say maybe 25, 30 maximum. I think it's another one that's risk-free, really, for Brentford.
I do think when you look at the links that he has had, though, across Europe, that it would be a massive coup for Brentford.
It would be.
But for me, I've been a bit more creative with Brentford, because the way I saw it is, with Christian Eriksen, they've lost a massive creative asset they had last year. Everyone saw their improvements since January. And he needs someone of that ilk or similar creative ability. Now, I know this player in question has been linked with Turkey, specifically Besiktas. He's a player that has always devised opinion with myself. I don't really like or rate him too much, but there's definitely talent in there. And that is Dele Alli. I think they should hijack that move, because with Eriksen, they did rebuild his career. Not many people took the gamble, and they were intelligent enough to see the player that was there and bring him in. And now he's at United, obviously, but they took that leap of faith. And I think, especially from when you look at, it's roughly 6 million Everton want for him, apparently, or something like that. Yeah. I think that he does have creative ability. You saw in, say, Jose Mourinho's season, there was that period that I remember where he did get him playing a bit better. For example, and there was a goal that I remember that was massively praised, where he didn't score it, I don't think, but he was on the touchline and he didn't give up on that ball, and he kept working on it, and he was on the floor and played it in. It was on the All or Nothing documentary, I believe, as well. And he's definitely a creative player. He's a goal scorer as well. If you can get him singing on the right hymn sheet and to work hard, etc., you are looking at a player who did score 20 goals in a Premier League season. So I think they should take that gamble. I think that Frank would do a master stroke with him and get him firing again. And I don't think he should leave England, because I just don't. I think Besiktas is a step down in career path.
Yeah,
I think that lower Premier League teams would still take a gamble on him if he is okay with taking lower wages.
Yeah. I think that's the problem with him. If you see how promising he was with these young players, they always get these big bumper contracts straight away, and then if things end up going down the wrong road and you end up having to move, it becomes more difficult to get them to that club because of the high wages they've been on before.
Yeah. So next one, I'll take this one first. I've gone with, well, it's obviously Brighton, But for Brighton, I've gone with Billy Gilmore on loan. The reason being is it doesn't look like Tuchel likes youth players for a start.
No.
So he's probably available. Obviously, he had a horrid time at Norwich, but he's still a talented player. And when I see Brighton, they play really good football and the Potter, nice attacking play. But Adam Lallana sticks out like a
I
sore
know.
thumb. Every single time I see him, I'm like, this kid has been around for 20 years. He's like 35. I think he's 33, but like injury-prone midfielder. Yes, he's Premier League proven. Yes, he's talented. But what is he still doing playing at the highest level? I don't know. Even when I watch him, he's a good player, but he could do so much better in that position. And I think Billy Gilmore, being a creative, young, exciting, energetic player in that position, substitute for Potterbull, he would do pretty well under Potter, in my opinion. So that is who I went for.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. For me, anyway, I've gone with Ismaila Sarr. I think the issue with Brighton is while they play brilliant football, they're solid in defence and they'll get some great results against the big sides. I don't think they've got someone who will score them enough goals in the season. And Ismaila Sarr obviously got relegated with Watford last season. And his level is, for me anyway, is definitely the Premier League. And I think if he played for that step-up team, that better team than Watford, you'd see how good he is. And that pace that he's got, that raw pace to get in behind defences, it's scary, really. And I think that's exactly what they need.
This is a player that last season was linked with Liverpool as well. So he's definitely a talent.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
I'll let you go Chelsea first then.
Right. So Chelsea, I've gone with Memphis Depay. Obviously, he's been linked with Juventus a lot over the past few weeks. They seem to be gobbling up every free agent or player that's wanting to leave. You see Pogba, Di Maria, they've signed all sorts really. But 28, he got 12 goals in La Liga last season, which just shows how good a player he still is. 28, obviously, still almost coming into his prime, almost not even there yet. And Chelsea seem to lack that goal scorer in their team last season. I'm unsure who was their top scorer, but it was no more than 10 or 12 goals for the season. It might have even been Jorginho, I'm not sure. But it's obvious they've got some really nice wingers. I think Mount's a brilliant player. So Sterling, who they've brought in. But that player to go straight down the middle, score them 10, 15 goals a season, I think that's exactly who they need.
I would massively agree with that pick, to be fair, if he wasn't going to Juventus. I have actually mentioned him later on in this list, but I do think Depay would be an excellent acquisition for them. I tried to go a bit more outlandish because obviously Aubameyang's been linked recently, and it looks like they're going to go for Aubameyang. Now, I thought, let's be a bit more intelligent about this. If you're Chelsea, you want someone who's a bit younger, got a bit between the teeth and can prove themselves in the Premier League.
Yeah.
When I think of Chelsea, the issue last season wasn't that they couldn't play with target man in Lukaku. The issue was that Lukaku wasn't a target man. Yeah. So they were playing as if they played with a target man who could hold up the ball, could touch, flick on and stuff, even though he wasn't. So for me, it's like, for example, if they brought Giroud and imported him in, they would have done better because they already have that style of play sort of thing, which is why Kai Havertz did much better when he dropped in, because he's someone who can link up the play. So with that sort of thought in mind, I thought we want someone who can link up the play, but is also a goal scorer. And for me, Andre Silva from Frankfurt, I know he's just signed a new contract, but you can't get much more clinical in Europe at the moment than him. Yeah. Also coupled with the fact that I don't actually think the striker market is very good at the moment.
No, it's definitely not.
There's not a lot around. And then the other one, who is a proven Premier League goal scorer, it's just whether you want to negate the fact he's had injuries every season, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think he'd do very well in that system. You could even go, when you're thinking of a link-up striker, hold-up striker for Ivan Toney, I think he'd be a great signing for Chelsea and an intelligent one at that.
For sure, yeah. I completely agree. Right then, should we move on to Crystal Palace? I'll go first for this one. It's a bit of a strange one who I've gone with here, because if you go back 3-4 years, you'd be thinking, there's no way you're saying this. It's crazy. It's Aaron Wan-Bissaka back on loan to Crystal Palace. I think Crystal Palace, when I look at their defence, I think it's really solid, other than that right back position. Because I think Tyreek Mitchell, I think he's great defensively, and he's come in and he's been brilliant. Anderson has been brilliant. I mean, against Liverpool, he stood out massively. He's been great for them. He's been solid for them as well. Him and Anderson seem to have got a great partnership going there. But then it's either Klein or Ward, who I think both of them are aging players who are long overdue being replaced. And with Wan-Bissaka out of favour now under Ten Hag, from what it seems, because of he likes to play attacking wing backs or full backs, should I say? I think it'd be a great signing for them because I think United are trying to get all these high wage players off their books, so just to help the wage structure really, and it'd be something that Palace would be interested in, and I'm sure he'd be interested in. He's been there before. He's great defensively, Wan-Bissaka. I think it'd be the perfect move for everyone involved, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's a phenomenal defender, really. He just doesn't have that attacking threat that's needed at United. Yeah. For me, I was a bit mixed, right? So, Ismaila Sarr's obviously been linked, and I think he'd be absolutely phenomenal under Vieira for Palace. However, if late doors, it looks like Chelsea are not going to play Conor Gallagher this season as much as they should do. I think they should put in a cheeky bid to try and get him off their hands. Yeah. Bring him back. I think that would be a huge statement of intent. I don't know how realistic it really is, but if they can, then go for it. Yeah. While you were talking then, I thought of another one that's a possibility. With a year left on his contract, I think if he was willing to stay in England, which I don't know if he is because I think his heart's set on Real Betis, they could do a lot worse than Hector Bellerin.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I think he wants to stay at Betis, so I think that'll happen. But yeah, so they're my thoughts for Palace. If we move to Everton next, I know you quite like Frank and the job he's doing. What I thought though is that Everton needs someone who's going to hold on to the ball for them. They can't forever be losing the ball and being attacked against, which is partly why they conceded so many last season. They just didn't have the ball much. And he's adopted this new three at the back system by the looks of things. And when you think of his Derby County system and later his Chelsea teams, they both had a player that had massive high ball retention numbers in it. Yeah. So, for example, Jorginho completed near on, 80 passes a game or something, and he had 90-odd pass completion rate per season. They weren't necessarily the most creative numbers from him. He's not the most creative player, but he just kept the play ticking, kept the ball, and kept the possession rolling for them. So I thought Everton don't really have a player who's necessarily the best at that. They've obviously got Alan, who's more of a box-to-box midfielder, good progressor in terms of dribbling. But for this one, I thought, who is, say, a B-Tech Jorginho? I mean, I don't really rate Jorginho too highly, but who is a player that can do that job, is available? And I think Harry Winks would be perfect for that role in terms of for Everton, obviously. Obviously, he'd be taking a step down. I don't think he's that good of a player overall, but he's also very good at retaining the ball. He always has been for Spurs. He just keeps things ticking, even though he's kind of limited in other aspects of the game. So I think Harry Winks would be a perfect signing for that system. Then if you want to be a bit more creative, I looked at Chelsea again because they have so many B-Tech assets. And I thought you could do a lot worse. They've obviously lost Richarlison. They could do a lot worse than Hakim Ziyech because every time I see him play consistent minutes, he plays very well. And he's a very aesthetically pleasing footballer. He just needs to keep fit, and I'm not sure that'll happen, but Hakim Ziyech could be a good move to Everton.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Ziyech's left foot it's one of the best there is, really. If you give him the ball on the edge of the box, I think the opposition's defence is going to be worried. So for Everton, I've gone with the attacking route for a potential signing for them, and I've gone Armando Broja. I feel like I'm talking about him every video at this point, but I think he's a great player, really high potential. He's only 20, so he's got a lot of growth to happen if he did move to Everton. He scored 6 goals last season for Southampton in his breakthrough season. I thought, while on paper 6 goals, it's not the best, as his first season as a full starter in Premier League football, I thought it was a great start for him. And I think he's the type of player where Chelsea would be willing to let him go on a permanent. It's not like with, say, Gallagher or some of the other players like Mount in the past, who they've only been wanting to let go of him on a loan. But I think 25 to 30 million for him. I think he's exactly what they need, and he's not only good player now, but in the future he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I could see that happening. My only concern would be how long is DCL out for? Because you wouldn't want to bring in another asset for say 40 million that's going to do the same role. Especially when they don't really play two up front. They play obviously Richarlison played off DCL. But it's how it would fit in. I mean, I think if DCL continues with these injury woes, it's definitely a signing that would be intelligent. Definitely. I think for Fulham, then they have been linked with Justin Kluivert for 10 million, but on the loan with an option to buy. And I think I'd go with Justin Kluivert. I think that is a very nice, neat signing. Someone who's not necessarily amazing, but he's going to get you a decent amount of creation. Him paired with Andreas Pereira, I think would be a very nice little fluid attack. And then obviously with Mitrovic at the base of it, it's all about getting the balls into the box. So I think that would be my signing for Fulham.
Right then, so going on to who I've gone for Fulham, I've gone for Adama Traore. I think it was a surprise for me anyway when he went to Barcelona on loan for the season. I was surprised he got that move after not proving himself too much for Wolves in the Premier League in terms of goal scoring output. But as you said with Kluivert, we've both gone for wingers. I think what they need is someone who can whip that perfect cross in for Mitrovic to get on the end of, because his aerial threat is one of the best in the league, as seen against Liverpool. And as seen when he was playing with Jimenez at Wolves, his ability to burst down the line, straight to the byline, and whip that perfect cross in at height for the striker's head in, I think it's exactly what they need, really.
Yeah, my only thing I will say about Adama Traore is his output, other than his little spell at Barcelona, has been pretty horrendous.
Yeah,
his assists and goal scoring output isn't great. He's an immense dribbler, I admit, but like when he gets to that byline or whatever, it doesn't necessarily breed confidence, should I say?
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, I can understand the reasoning behind it. It's a sensible point. He did do well at Barcelona when he was on loan. He was quite frightening. So there is a player in there, definitely.
Yeah. Right then. So should we move on to Leeds?
Yeah, next is Leeds. I'll let you start first.
Right then. So for Leeds, I've gone with Sergio Reguilon from Tottenham. When I've been looking at Leeds, looking at the starting lineup, for me there seems to be one player standing out as a sore thumb almost in that team, and it's Pascal Struijk. He's been playing as almost like a makeshift left back, when that's just not his position for me anyway. He's definitely a centre back. They have got Firpo, but I think last season whenever I saw him, he was really poor. I think just the fact that he's been at Barcelona has given him more credit than he actually has in ability. And Reguilon seems to be down the pecking order at Spurs due to the amount of depth they've now got in the wing back positions. And I think along with Winks, there's a few there that do need to leave. And I think it'd be a good signing for Leeds because he's attacking, and I think he'd work well in Jesse Marsh's system.
Right. Well, I mean that makes a lot of sense for me. I do agree, but for me, I went for something a bit different. I thought they've lost Rafinha, they've lost Calvin Phillips, they've losing their key players. Who do they bring in that could be of that quality and definitely has the talent to sort of burst onto the scene in English football, at least, similarly to how Rafinha did? Now, I think one of those unknown quantities is Ryan Kent. He's been superb since he's been at Rangers, and he has taken like a duck to water to Scottish football. There's no doubt about his talent. There never has been. He was highly thought of when he was at Liverpool. So for me, I think that he would be great on that right-hand side for Leeds. He does give me massive Jack Harrison vibes. And that's not a bad thing because Jack Harrison is a very good player who came from obviously City. This is just a very good player who came from Liverpool. But he gives me that sort of vibes in terms of ability as well. And he likes to work hard, and I think he'd fit right in at Leeds.
Yeah, me too. Right then, who we got next?
Next is Leicester.
Right. Do you want me to start with this one?
Go for it.
Right. So I think with Leicester, I'm surprised that they've not had any business whatsoever in the transfer window so far in terms of players coming into the club. But I think Wesley Fofana, I think he's definitely going to leave before the end of the transfer window. Chelsea seem to be very persistent on that move. And some of the fees, it's like 80 odd million minimum for him. I think that's ridiculous fee for him. I suppose because
just on a quick side note of ridiculous fees, have you seen that Morgan Gibbs White is going for 40?
My God, 45 million. Where's that come from?
Mental, isn't it? Mental. Yeah. It's for Nottingham. Is it to Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, no, it's to Forest. It is to Forest. Yeah. But yeah, I think the Fofana one is just because of the basis that Leicester bought him for 30. It's always going to be a high fee, and I think he's got 3 or 4 years left on his contract. So I thought if he's leaving, a player who I think because Chelsea signing Fofana will no longer really be of use to Chelsea is Trevor Chalobah. I think he's a great player, and I think probably as a loan deal, I'd say. I don't think they're quite ready to let go of him on a permanent, but at least for this season, I think it'd be a great season for him as well to develop as a player. Get at a team where it's not as much you're going to have all the ball, and see. Oh, sorry, I've just had a slight error here with the thing. There we go. Right, I'm back. And just see how he can thrive in a team where he's more of the main man in the defence. I think it'd be a good signing for them.
Yeah, I sort of went for a similar idea in terms of they're going to lose a key asset, replace him. But in mine, it was more. I thought if Youri Tielemans does go to Arsenal, like I've stated earlier in my list, that I think would happen, ideally, then they'll need a replacement. Now, Forest were linked recently, I believe, with £12 million for Houssem Aouar from Lyon.
Yeah.
Now, Houssem Aouar is an unbelievable talent. His attitude is questionable. He doesn't seem to work hard when the team are playing poorly, and that is something you'd have to take into account. But I think under Brendan Rodgers in the system with Ndidi next to him and Maddison, Houssem Aouar would be a nice little addition. He's not as defensively solid as or work and doesn't work as hard as Youri Tielemans, but I think with Ndidi next to him, you'd be able to make it work. He can also play on the wing when Harvey Barnes is inevitably injured, and he's a very talented player. There's no doubt about it. So as long as they can turn around his poor form as of last season, towards the end of last season at least, I believe Houssem Aouar would be a very intelligent pickup for them, especially because I think he's getting the last year of his contract. They're only asking for around 12 million. Leicester don't seem to have much money, so I thought, that would be a good move for them. Next up, though, would be Liverpool.
Yeah.
And there's the obvious one, and then there's the other one I've gone for. So I named 2 because Bellingham is this outstanding candidate. It's going to probably happen next year. I think the writing's on the wall for it. It's the worst kept secret in football by the sound it seems of it. And there's no doubt about his ability from Dortmund. Probably the best, if not top 5 best young centre mids in world football. His ceiling is absolutely phenomenal. He's obviously English as well, so that's good for the homegrown quota, which is coming into effect next season. So I think that will probably be Liverpool's main signing next summer, not this summer. But in the meantime, I did look at the midfield. The midfield needs a lot of reinforcement. So the ideal signing, I think, that's available this summer would be Sergio Malinkovic-Savic. He's a high presser. He's physically dominant. He's a very good passer. He's creative. And I think that would be key because in Klopp's system, the midfield needs to act as the workhorse of the team. And I think he definitely has the attributes to be able to do so. He's also, I believe it's £60 million rumoured fee. Yeah. Not too bad, really, for a player of that standard.
I mean, for 80 and then him for 60, it's not. There's no way. That's no means a bad fee to have to pay for, is it?
No. He's a good age profile. Is he 28, 27?
Yeah, around that. Yeah.
I think he's perfect for them. I just don't think it'll happen. But I think that's who I'd put forward for Liverpool.
Yeah, I completely agree. And on my behalf, anyway, I've gone for Jude Bellingham. I think how he's been playing at such a young age for Dortmund, not just in the Bundesliga, but in the Champions League as well. I mean, he got three goals and 8 assists last season in the Bundesliga, and it's in one of his earlier seasons. So I think he's that progressive ball carrier who can play that perfect passing behind that they're needing because
he's also defensive.
Exactly, he gives a bit of everything.
Yeah, he's physically dominant as well, and he's going to be a complete midfielder.
Yeah, I think obviously their midfield is something that needs to be not necessarily, I think, improved on and just bolstered almost a little bit because it's getting a bit thin with Henderson keeps getting injured and he's getting a bit older. Thiago's out for 6 weeks. And it's been rumoured recently that Naby Keita wants to leave as well. So I think
he's always injured.
I think they do need to improve their midfield. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both of them would be brilliant, to be fair.
Yeah.
For City, you're the resident City fan, so I'll let you go for this one
first.
Then
I'll go first. I've been really happy with how City have done their business this summer, as I'm sure pretty much every City fan in the world has been, with Haaland coming in. Alvarez, I think, is a good signing for the future. The other day, Sergio Gomez, I think he's another good one for the future. He'll play that sort of Zinchenko role, I think, with how versatile he is, playing in midfield, playing in fullback. So a position that I do think we need to strengthen, which is strange for City, is I think we need another winger. Because if you look at the right-hand side of our attack, at the moment, Riyad Mahrez is pretty much the only one that's an out-and-out right winger. And then it's Cole Palmer below him as the player to come in the lesser games. So I've gone with Leroy Sané to possibly return to Man City. I think the only worry that I think about this is that I think he possibly fell out with Pep during his time at City. So I worry if that might affect it. But upon the leaving of Sterling and Jesus, I think we're starting to lack a bit of raw pace in our attack. And with Sané not doing too brilliantly recently, as you said before, in the Bundesliga, I mean, he got 7 goals, I think it was, in the Bundesliga last year. And when they signed him, they'd have been hoping for minimum 10 in that league at least, when they're for such a dominant team as well. And I think most City fans would love to have him back because when he was at City, he was unstoppable on his day.
Just bring in Adama Traore for that raw pace.
That would be.
I agree. They do need to add some pace. But for me, I thought about it, and one thing that's been apparent for the last 3 or 4 seasons now is the lack of midfield depth. When you look at numbers, City have. Yeah. You've got Rodri, right? They've brought in Calvin Phillips. That's your DM sorted now. Brilliant. You've got KDB, and then Gundogan in centre midfield. Then you have Bernardo in it, who sort of like comes in and goes around. He can play right wing, centre mid. Foden sort of does the same. But I do think they could do with one that could sort of play the DM and the centre mid, just as another option in there. Then I thought about what Pep wants. Obviously, he wants a very high pressing system. It needs to be something that's fast paced. The player needs to be very technically gifted. And they need to be very specific. They don't necessarily always have to be the tallest either. No. And when I look around world football, I don't see many players better than Nicola Barella from Inter Milan.
Yeah.
And the Italian is elite, clearly elite, an absolutely fantastic player who I'd love to see in the Premier League. I'd love to see him under Pep. Defensively amazing, energetic, full of life. And while he's not necessarily as integral as what I'd say the winger signing would be, because I do think you need some pace as well, I think it would be a very intelligent bit of business. It would improve the team overall. Granted, he's only going to play 25 games a season, but that's because of Pep's rotation. I know he has bits of injuries, but you don't usually play as many games under Pep because he needs to rotate, because otherwise you'd be shattered playing with that high press constantly. So for me, Nicola Barella will be my choice for City's midfielders. And that links to another team that needs a midfielder, Manchester United.
Yes.
They've been linked with Casemiro today, who I actually think will be a perfect signing. But they do need him and another. But my pick, which I said in the United video prior that we've done, is Wilfred Ndidi. I think he is absolutely screaming for a move to a top 6 club. Yeah. He's amazing. He's an immense defensive midfielder, a destroyer, absolute out and out. And I think if you've got Ndidi, because he's already adapted to the Prem, because of the way he plays, because of his defensive numbers, etc., you don't necessarily need to get a box-to-box midfielder next to him this season. You would be able to make do with Fred next to him, because he would cover the whole defensive issues that United have, and Fred could then just do his little run-around role thing. So it would take off the pressure from Fred and McTominay, because obviously they are not good enough as a pair. And it would also stop attacks and stop the exposure that's on their back line that they have at the moment. That being said, I think Casemiro does near on the exact same thing. He may be a bit slower than Ndidi, but he's definitely got the weight about him. And therefore, either signing would be good. I just think with Casemiro, because he's not necessarily as quick as Ndidi, you might need to bring in another player next to him, say Frankie and Casemiro, or Yuri Tielemans and Casemiro. I don't think it's necessarily going to be just that one player.
Yeah, I completely agree with the Wilfred Ndidi one. I've gone for him as well. I've gone for Wilfred Ndidi as my pick for United as well. I think the difference between him and Casemiro is Casemiro's 30, and it's another one of those signings that we spoke about this a lot in the Man United video we did the other day. And they keep signing these players that are 30 plus, and they do a really good job, or they seem like a good idea for a couple seasons, but then you end up having to replace them, and then they keep getting in this loop of signing these 30 plus year old players over and over. So Wilfred Ndidi, he's 25 as well.
400k a week for Casemiro.
I know that. I mean, their wage structures already seems to be having problems with all the players they need to get rid of. But Wilfred Ndidi, he's 25. He's played in the Premier League for a decent few years now. I think he's exactly what they need, and with that extra pace to get up.
Do you think
possible?
The early stages of Casemiro's career was probably when the Modric, Casemiro, Kroos midfield was in its pomp. Yeah. You argue that was also when Ronaldo, well, that was towards the end of his tenure, but Ronaldo was still at Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Do you think Casemiro might be a Ronaldo requested signing to try and get him to be happy?
I think personally, Ronaldo already wants to leave. I think he's got his mindset on leaving no matter what now. So I think if he did stay, I think that would definitely be one he tried to push for, as well as possibly Varane as well, because those three would, I'm sure they've got links with each other after playing at Real Madrid. But I think Ronaldo, I think he's made his decision now, and I think he's going to be leaving either way, to be honest.
But like, what's going to happen then? Because who's going to take him in the Champions League?
I don't know. I could see him going. I think Sporting would be. I think that would be if he had to choose one that's realistic that he can play in the Champions League. I think Sporting.
He's too good at the moment for Portugal.
He is, but I don't think anyone else would take him. And I think as a last resort, that's his only option, really.
He should have gone to City.
I'm very glad that we didn't sign him in the end, because when we saw it was between City or United at one point, I was disappointed when we didn't sign him. But obviously,
we could have had a world. We could have genuinely had a world where Haaland right now was at United and City or something.
That would be ridiculous.
Anyway, moving on, Newcastle. I'll let you tackle them first.
So Newcastle, I've gone with Ante Rebic from AC Milan. Last season, he seemed to struggle for form. He only got 2 goals in the Serie A last season, which is definitely underperforming from him. But in the season before that, he seemed to average 11, 12 goals a season. And for a winger, I think that's a great return. And he's 28, so he's coming into his prime. I look at Newcastle starting 11, and I think it's come leaps and bounds from a few seasons ago, for example, obviously with the new investment. And I think they need that versatile type of player that can play across the front three like he can. And I just don't think Almiron there's no way Almiron is fit to be in this new look Newcastle side. So I think Ante Rebic, proven. I could see him being up for that move because being a part of this Newcastle rebuild seems to be quite an attractive thing. So yeah, I think he'd be perfect.
My only issue with Rebic is his age profile. It's slightly on the latter stage of what I think.
It is. Yeah. I do think. No, 28 years. 28.
28. Yeah, I think he's still a little on the late side, but I mean, he's an intelligent signing, very good player. One thing I like about what Newcastle are doing is they're being shrewd with the business.
Yeah.
They're taking good assets from other clubs, or they're taking undervalued assets from other clubs. So, one that I want to put forward is another Arsenal man. Surprise, surprise. I've got such an imagination. But there's been links in this transfer window, and I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. I think Nicola Pepe to Newcastle for 25 million-ish. Yeah. You're going to get a talent that is clearly a very good player. He's a very good dribbler. When he was at Liga and he got 22 goals. I think he was only outscored by Mbappe that season at Lille in this final season. He's shown glimpses of his quality at Arsenal. He's just not sustained it over a long period of time. I think it was not last season, the season before last, the back end of that season, there was like a 3-month spell where he was unplayable. But other than that, he's not been consistent enough. But with the way Newcastle play, the way they can break and also control possession with Bruno Guimaraes and stuff, I think that he would be perfect for this new Newcastle team. And he's also a big name, so it's sort of something that you can sort of sell, if that makes sense, for the project. And I think he's gettable. The other shout I put forward is someone you used earlier, which would be Memphis Depay. If they can scupper the Juve deal, I think that would be an absolutely phenomenal signing. I think they just need a winger who can play striker as well. But it's simply, I think Pepe is my shout for Newcastle though.
I think again, like a few of the other signings, it's great for everyone involved. Arsenal it was a ridiculous fee in my opinion anyway to sign him for 70-odd million, but they get some money back, which I think they'll be happy with, and Pepe gets a good opportunity at a prospering club.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the moment, it's looking like a loan to Lille or something at the moment, but I don't know.
It seems when these players going back to their whole club.
Yeah. For the next one, it's Forest.
Right then.
And I put in capitals on my little notes, stop buying players. They don't need anyone else. They've got 16, I think, now. They just don't need anyone else. I was a bit lazy with this one because I have no idea. To be honest, I have no idea the outlook of that squad. I look at the signings they've made. They've got a whole new squad. I don't know who's going to fit in where. I don't know who's going to play well in the system. They're an unknown quantity. So I had to judge it off the links that were made. And for that, I think James Garner from United is quite a decent pickup. He's clearly talented. I'm not sure how good he is because I've not seen him play much. But I mean, if he's going to be on the bench for most times and then have some appearances to gradually bring him into the team, I think that seems quite an intelligent one, especially if they're looking to get rid of him for such a cut price fee. I believe it was in £10 million or something they were willing to get rid of him for. So James Garner seems like the obvious one, but they just need to stop buying players.
They do. Yeah, for me, it was a tough one to pick a player because every player they've been linked with, it seems like they've just gone and got them. They're running out of players that are available for them to sign at this point. But I went with Chafet Tanganga from Spurs on a possible loan deal for the season. I think he's obviously lacking game time now. They've got so many defenders in now at Spurs, all these wing backs they've brought in, Buen Longley at the back. They've got quite a lot of depth there. And I think his versatility would be quite useful for them because, as seen at Spurs, he can play either of the wing back positions and he can play as a centre half as well. I think he'd be perfect for them because with that system, depth is important because of how many you've got 3 centre backs playing at one given time. You're going to need quite a few backups as well. And he's played in the Premier League before, so I think that'd be quite a decent one.
Yeah, I mean, it's sensible, isn't it? And he's English as well, which is still a big sort of thing, especially next year if they do stay up. I don't think Forest will stay up, but if they do, then obviously the English quota comes into effect. One issue with Forest, though, is if they do go down, they've got such players on big wages in the Championship.
It's a big risk, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. Next up is Southampton.
Right.
Now, when I watch Southampton, Hasenhüttl, I do actually think he's an amazing manager. I think he gets the best out of a bad bunch of players, really. They should be relegated for the last 3 years, and he's done an amazing job to keep them up. High-tempo football. They don't really score enough goals even still for me, in my opinion. And I think that's more because of ball retention, both from dribbling and passing. I don't think it's necessarily the coach. So for that, I thought they need to add a bit of spice, a bit of creativity sort of thing because they've got the likes of Che Adams, who's a really good player. They've got James Ward-Prowse, who's good in midfield, and Romeu, who's a decent enforcer. So I thought a winger is probably the best option for them. I know they've got Gineppo, who looks like he might be leaving. And they've also, I think they've still got Theo Walcott knocking about. They've also loaned in quite a few players. But for me, I went with Ismail Assar. Now, I know he's linked with, is it Palace at the moment? But I think if Southampton have the money, that would be the most intelligent bit of business they could do. Bring in someone who will improve their attack tenfold already. And you just got, to be honest, with with Hasenhüttl, just give him what he wants. And if he had a good set of players, he'd probably come top half, to be honest. I think he's that good a manager.
Yeah, I think he's a great manager. They've seemed to lack the big signings over the past few years, and I think that's what they've been needing to get from that. Because I don't think they've, over the past few seasons, it's not really been a doubt that they'll go down. But it's never been in my head, like with Palace, a couple of teams like that they're going to get into the top half. So for me anyway, I've gone for a striker.
I think with a team, though, if you look at the team compared to other teams, they should go down. It's just not a doubt.
Yeah, they are quite weak, especially with depth as well, I think. But for Southampton, I've gone with a striker because I think the fact they've lost Brogan, obviously, he's ended his loan spell last season. I think they need that striker who can come in and shock people, really. And Michy Batshuayi from Chelsea, I think on a loan deal for the season, he could come in and I think he could surprise people. Obviously, he's been on loan at Palace, he's been on loan at Dortmund, he's been all over the place, Batshuayi. But I think there is still a lot of potential with him. And he's 28 now, so he should be coming into his prime. I think he's that type of player that will surprise people. And when given a full season, like at Palace, he didn't get given a regular enough game time for him to be able to hit form. I think it'd be a decent signing, and another one that Chelsea could do is getting off their books.
Batshuayi screams Everton.
He is quite an Everton signing. I'm just stuck with you on that one.
Screams Everton. I think in a similar vein, like someone like Ihe Iheanacho could end up there at Southampton.
Yeah, they've got tons of strikers, haven't they, at Leicester? So that could be a possible move. Right then, so moving on to Spurs. So for Spurs, I think it's a tough one. We've done a video already on Spurs transfer business, but in terms of how they've covered their signings across the whole team, I think they've covered all bases in terms of the actual signings they made for each position. But if there was one position where I think could do with a little bit of strength, it'd probably be the centre-half position, centre-back. Because I think Longley coming in, I don't think it's enough of an improvement for where Tottenham are aspiring to be. So what I did was I went back and looked at who's played for Conte before, and Milan Skriniar stood straight out to me. He's got a year left on his contract at Inter, so it'd definitely be a cut price deal. He's 27, so he's coming straight into his prime. It's a good age. I think it'd be perfect for Spurs, really. Experienced, plays in a back three under Conte before. I think he's the type of player that will thrive at Spurs.
Yeah, I went down a similar thought process. I thought centre back definitely. But with Skriniar, it's not necessarily the right age profile for what I think that they should do. It's a very Conte signing, don't get me wrong, and he is a very good player, and he's probably better than the two options I've given. But the way I like to look at transfers, I like exciting players that match qualities. I think they desperately need an upgrade, especially at left centre back. So that is why I put forward a player who seems to be linked every summer to the Spurs and also linked with United every summer, being Pau Torres.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a great signing, for a great addition for them. Good ball passing numbers, and he's very technical, left-footed, obviously. The other option is a bit less technical, but he's more promising. I think his ceiling's sort of higher, but I can't see it happening, and that is Tapsoba. He's probably going to end up at Bayern or something like that because he's in the Bundesliga. Yeah. But I think that would be another option that if I was Spurs, I'd explore. Yeah. But moving on to the next one, you've got West Ham. Now, I look at the team, and I know they got Declan Rice, but it's forever weak in midfield, that team, in my head.
It really is.
They need someone a bit more of an enforcer, because obviously Declan can play CDM. He can also play centre mid. You've also a more advanced, and he's probably better when he's more advanced because he's their most technical player. The issue with West Ham is next season they're likely to not have Declan Rice anyway. So they're going to need someone who's adapted by that point to fill the void. And I'm not necessarily saying be as good as him because that would be hard to replace. But I think someone who's got all the attributes to be very important for West Ham is Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Now, I know he started the right wing back, for Tuchel for the last 2 games, I believe. And it does seem like all managers at Chelsea like him, but I don't believe he's Chelsea's level, really, to be honest. And but he is physically a brilliant player in terms of he's quick, agile, strong, athletic, and therefore I think he'd do a very good job at West Ham United.
Yeah, I completely agree with the fact that the midfield is lacking depth. I think they brought in Flynn Downs from Swansea. I think it's a good one for the future, but when you're looking at the fact West Ham are still in Europe this season in the Conference League, don't get me wrong, it's obviously not the highest level, but you still need that higher depth. So for midfield, I went with Conor Gallagher on loan. You mentioned him before. I think he's that kind of progressive ball carrier, a bit more progressive than Rice because he can play in that number 10 role as well, I believe. That would fit in nicely at West Ham and do the job for this season, to just help them with the extra rotation. I mean, 8 goals last season he got for Palace. That's brilliant considering he was playing mainly in a central midfield role, sometimes even as a pivot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for Wolves, which is the final one, this is the one I put more effort into the researching in terms of statistically.
Yeah.
This player's got 2 goals and 3 assists already in the first 3 games of the season for this team. And the reason I chose this player is because Wolves lack creativity. They lack goals, and their attack isn't exactly amazing. Now, when I look at them, they've obviously got Jota on not Jota. Is it Jota? No.
Neto, do you mean?
Neto on one side, sorry, and Podence on the other.
Yeah.
Podence is great in sort of ups and down waves. He's very inconsistent for a footballer. I see him one week, he's a world beater with his blistering pace, and then I see him the next, and he's like literally the equivalent of a blunt spoon. Like he's not the greatest. So I thought, who do we take a gamble on? Now we know Wolves' philosophy is Portuguese players. That's who they like. They like young Portuguese players specifically. And that's why I think that there's one man that will elevate their game to another level, offensively at least. And that is Jota from Celtic. He's had a fantastic season last season. He's having another fantastic season already. He's clearly too good for the Scottish League. And I believe he is ready for that jump to Wolves, and he'd fit in really well there.
Yeah, I think the attack is definitely what they need to improve on. Their defence at one point last season was the best in Europe, which shows obviously they're not needing to strengthen in that position, albeit they have brought in Nathan Collins, which I do think is a decent signing for the price.
It also does show that they are bloody boring.
It is a bit, yeah, it can be a dull watch with Wolves. So for Wolves, I've gone with an attacking signing as well, and I've gone with Goncalo Ramos from Benfica. He's 21, so he seems like a really promising player. He fits in with their sort of philosophy of having Portuguese players coming in quite regularly, to be honest. And he's been linked with lots of teams, Southampton recently, but I think Wolves would be perfect for him because they've got Jimenez as their main number 9, but as a backup for down the middle, I think they're really lacking, to be honest. They had Pedro Neto in pre-season was playing there quite often. Hwang Hee-chan used to play down the middle, but I don't think he's really got the pedigree or ability to play as a main number 9. So I think it would be a great place to develop for him.
Do you remember on like FPL when Hwang Hee-chan had like a 5-game run of just being amazing?
That was ridiculous.
But yeah, no, I agree. They definitely need an attacker, definitely. What we will do though, regarding the transfer window, we've spoke about it before, haven't we? That we'll do at the end of the transfer window an evaluation on our best sort of transfers of this window.
Yeah.
And sort of do an evaluation of the window itself. Yeah. So I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Obviously, if you want to see more from us, please be sure to subscribe.
Yeah.
And also like the video if you did enjoy it. Yeah. I've been Thomas, this has been Alex, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.